Recently, 2018, 2019, number one player in former University of Memphis, big man James Wiseman decided, I'm done with school. I'm just gonna, he gonna say he signed an agent. He's just gonna prepare and work out for the NBA draft. I know how you feel about that. You think a lot more players. If you want to go to the NBA, that's what you should do. And I know we've had this conversation plenty of times before. I know that you said recently that your son is talented enough for that. That's what he would do. And I think it's a good idea. I think we were talking about it yesterday, how, just work out. Because, of course, once after you get drafted, you're going to be on the NBA workout program.
Right. NBA training is more likely, especially if you have an agent. My question, which kind of caught me off guard, was I didn't know that he was going to be eligible to play
January
the 9th.
It was the 9th. I thought it was the 11th.
11, some
of
that range.
Less than a month away from being able to play again.
So I didn't know that he was even going to be eligible to play. So my only question, I'm definitely totally for what he did. I wonder why he made the decision now, since January is like 2 weeks away. Right. So he was going to be able to play soon. So I wonder why he decided now that he wanted to go pro. But I don't like I said, I don't blame him. We done talked about this many times in the past, even before it became trendy. Go back to the days of Brandon Jennings. Shout out to him when he went overseas. What was my boy? Jeremy Tyler. He left school in 10th grade, even before the days of like LaMelo Ball, which people know nowadays. So yeah, the only thing that caught me off guard was I was wondering why he did it now, since he's about to be eligible. But at worst he's gonna go number 3. More than likely he's going number 1. Right. So I think it's a good move for him, and especially he got his college coach was an NBA player, NBA ties. So I'm sure he has great people around him. I'm sure Penny's gonna help him out through the process, and hope he ends up with the Warriors. Really,
right? And I think Penny had a lot to do. I think Penny might have convinced him, because Penny,
convinced him to go to the league.
Yeah, because Penny's one. Penny said he was gonna play even if he was ineligible.
Right, Penny didn't care.
Right.
Fuck the championship this year.
Because Penny had a good recruiting class over this past summer anyway. So a lot of maybe 2 other players probably going into the draft. I think they ended up having the number 1 recruiting class.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they were number 1.
But it's like you say, as long as he stay on his basketball stuff throughout the year. I think we were saying yesterday, work out maybe 3-4 days out the week. Then you have another 2 days where you just do full court scrimmage stuff. Right. Then another day and a half you do skill training.
Right.
So, like I say, by the time you get drafted and you start doing the things working up to the pre-draft workout, that's going to be how you were in shape in college anyway.
Right.
Then summer league is going to come. Then, like I say, official training camp. Then preseason. So by the time the NBA season comes, as long as he keeps doing basketball stuff now up until then, It's not like he's not. He's going to be in great shape. You can say, well, you don't get to see him play against anybody. He's not playing against. No.
Right, nobody's really challenging him now anyway, and I just think we're in a climate nowadays where it's so many more professional athlete trainers, there's so many more basketball opportunities, and then there's ways to make money and get started as a pro where you don't have to go to college. You can sign an endorsement, sign with an agent, and just work out. Like, I'm sure, I don't know what agency he signed with, but I'm pretty sure they're getting him with Chris Johnson, Chris Brinkley, the NBA scouts, the NBA trainers right now. He's going to start his regimen, like I say, 3, 4, maybe even 5 days a week. Then have some days where he get to learn how to be a pro, take some meetings with some endorsements. He might sign an endorsement.
You can do all that without going to college.
Yeah, he especially, like you say, when you're chosen, he top 3. Right. He's a number 1 prospect for a lot of people. So shout out to Wiseman, man. I can't wait to see him in the NBA next year. And I think he's going to be a good player, too. I really hope he goes to the Warriors. He's a perfect fit for what the Warriors need to take them into this next decade. So shout out to him.
Right. And on that note, I'm John W.
Fresh X.
We are the Hoopers.
Couple big games last night. Beast in the East versus the best in the West. Fight for the best record in the league. Milwaukee versus the Lakers. And then Houston played the Clippers. So
the new king of LA, Kawhi Leonard. I'm calling him the king of LA for one reason. He decided to buy a multi-million-dollar mansion across the street from Staples Center. It's like Kobe didn't even do that.
Right, across from Staples Center. So
he said in the New Balance commercial, he said this is his city,
right?
And I think that proves the city. But back to the Milwaukee Los Angeles Lakers game last night, I was really impressed with Giannis. He had a career high 5 threes last night. George,
he did. He had a shot going for him.
Like, he took total control of the game. I think too, with people, Milwaukee the last couple seasons, since they won 60 last year, and they're going to win 60 again this year. They're not going 73-9, which they are on pace to do. They're not going to do that.
They on pace to go 7-3-9.
Yeah,
they got 4 losses right now. So I don't think that's going to happen.
But
either.
I think Milwaukee's defense is what really won that game for them, and the fact that their role players are better than the Lakers. But they played defense as perfect as you can against LeBron. Because he's still in the midst of whatever him and Anthony Davis doing the offense or whatever Frank Vogel wanted him to do. Right. He still wanted to run his drive and dish offense, and Milwaukee played that perfect.
And it's funny you say that their role players are better because I think that they do have solid role players. George Hill had 21 last night, but I don't even think that they have amazing role players.
No, not amazing.
But they do have solid role players, and I think what kind of came down to it last night was Giannis was by far the best player on the court. This is what was interesting to me last night. Because, LeBron, he finished with 8 for 19, 21 points. LeBron is LeBron. I think what stood out for me, what I took from the game from the beginning was this can't be about LeBron. It got to be about Anthony Davis. And Anthony Davis had a great game. He was actually +6 and ± for people who like that. 36 points. 36 points, and I think he had 11 rebounds, something in that range. 10 rebounds, 10 rebounds, and 5 assists. He was 11-25 for the field. And even though his numbers are on par with Giannis, it just felt like Giannis was way better than Anthony Davis.
Anthony Davis came up. He was New Orleans Anthony Davis again.
He had 36 points.
He had 36. But how many of those?
36 points. 36 points. I'm going to say it over and over.
But how many of those times in New Orleans was there those 36 and 10 and 3 block games where it's like, well, were you even still out there though?
And he played like I say, it's weird. You just have to watch the game. Big minutes for him, over 40 minutes after not playing the night before. 36 points again. But it just seemed like Giannis was better than he was out hustling him at times. I saw him take some rebounds from him and stuff like that. And they're both fours, so they
did guard each other. They were
guarding
each other, which I was about to get to next. Anthony Davis didn't look like he could guard Giannis. I know Anthony Davis was coming off ankle injury. He didn't play the game. He didn't play the game before.
Right.
But Anthony Davis looked ineffective against Giannis on offense and defense. Like I say, he did have 36.
Right.
But Giannis took Anthony Davis out of the game.
Right, and earlier in the game, I thought Anthony Davis was going to play Giannis pretty well because what I saw was kind of what I saw from Kawhi guarding Giannis last year. Giannis was trying to dribble past Anthony Davis, and his handle isn't super strong, so he couldn't get by him. Anthony Davis was beating him to the spots. So then his 3 started going 5 for 8 from 3 last night, and then Anthony Davis just couldn't really guard him, honestly. And, I mean, Giannis MVP, he's averaging 30. Who can guard him? But if anybody can guard him, it would be Anthony Davis, right? Like, Anthony Davis, top 5 players.
I would say this. In the second half, LeBron was on Giannis a lot of possessions.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. And LeBron was able to negate some of the things he was able to do. Because, I don't think Anthony Davis is too thin to actually guard Giannis consistently.
Which is funny, considering Giannis is so thin, but he's so cut and strong.
Yeah.
So.
But I think that was a big difference in that matchup. And like I said, I just want to go back to the Milwaukee defense real quick. I brought it up real quick, but Milwaukee played, like I said, they played with having Wesley Matthews on LeBron, who's not as he was like, oh, Wesley Matthews is not going to be big enough, but Wesley Matthews is a pest.
Right.
And once he steps in front of you to cut off that driving lane, and Milwaukee is so long, then after that on the perimeter, there's no corners to pass the ball to or any weak side passes because they're all playing the passing lane, which LeBron had, I think, 8.
He had 4 turnovers.
4 turnovers,
I believe it was. Yeah, 4 turnovers.
4 turnovers. And I think that was a product of Milwaukee playing the shooting lane and Wesley Matthews or whoever was the primary person guarding LeBron, cutting him off to the basket. Like I said, you're not going to stop LeBron. He's a superstar. He's been a superstar since 3rd, 4th year in the league. You can only contain him, and Milwaukee did a great job containing him last night.
I got a stat for people. This is funny to me because everybody like the plus-minus stats. That's which I like it, but I don't love it. Not the toolbox. LeBron had the worst plus-minus for the starters in the Lakers last night. -14. He's the only person in the starting lineup that was negative. I just want to throw that out there. It means nothing, but that's what the plus-minus people. Remember they was killing Melo after the first game? Talking about his plus-minus. Well, LeBron was -14 last night. I guess he's washed up. But I'm going to give Wesley Matthews his credit, though, because he was really bothering LeBron. The Bucks do hang their hat on. They're one of the best defensive teams in the league, I think, up there with them, Philly. There's a couple teams. Toronto's a good defensive team. So they're really up there with the top defensive teams. So this is a question maybe for a later episode. I just think I want people to ponder on. And it feels silly to say because, again, he had 36 points. But I feel like Anthony Davis is just more of LeBron's sidekick than they both should be in the MVP conversation. Big numbers, cool, but he's not an MVP candidate. He the first game, they looked like they was going to heavily weigh on Anthony Davis. They went to him a lot, and then they lost or whatever. His first game, though, we can't over-exaggerate it. But then they kind of went away and LeBron taking more control. Right. I think he's really more LeBron's sidekick than it being Shaq and Kobe.
I did see Anthony Davis floating a lot right on the perimeter on offense.
It happened.
But I think, that's not completely how they want to run the offense, but that's what it did look like last night. Anthony Davis was more the sidekick role.
Right.
And just trying to feed off LeBron where, maybe Anthony Davis should be more aggressive.
And then, LeBron's his favorite player. His favorite player as a kid, so it's like a dream for him to play with LeBron, but I think he needs to... to me, he needs to, I don't know that he's doing this, but it just seems like he still look at LeBron like an idol when they should be peers. You know what I mean? Like, if Anthony Davis is top 5 and LeBron's top 5, y'all both MVP candidates. I just expected more from him.
Right.
And,
43
minutes, 36 points, what more could he have done, I guess. So, I don't know. You just had to watch the game. If you was watching the game, let me know how did Anthony Davis play to you last night? So...
And that's beyond the box score.
Right, beyond the box score.
He has 36 and 10.
Top 10 player in the league.
Which is crazy. He's not even really averaging 10 rebounds this year. You would expect.
Anthony Davis is?
He might be up to 10 now, but but last time I saw it was like 8 or 9. But
okay. I want to get into a little bit just real quick. The Houston game last night. Houston beat the Clippers actually 122-117, and Russell Westbrook with 40 points. He kind of willed them to the win, I guess you could say, brought them back in. But I was high on, not that I was high on Houston. I just think that this was the year when every once in a while teams just break through. So I was like, this is the year. But I don't like Houston no more. I'm tired of these really high shots. 40 points for Westbrook, 31 shots, 8 turnovers. I mean, it didn't really just seem like a good game. And he, like I said, they had to not crawl back into it, but they kind of had to get back into it because the Clippers was winning them. They had a big third quarter or whatever. But I'm a little worried about Houston. They're so heavily reliant on, who isn't? They're heavily reliant on their star players. But when it's not going for them, it's just not going. Right. And I just still don't think James Harden steps up. Like last night, you're playing heavyweights. And when the stuff gets tough, nobody's really noticed it this year because James is averaging 38. But when it gets tough and they need to get gritty, they need to grind and win the game and pull it out, Westbrook their best player. They follow Westbrook.
But see, I think that was the whole thing of getting Westbrook with James Harden because there's such different personalities on the court as well as off the court.
Yeah, Westbrook's not going to fade.
He's not. James Harden, I'm not saying James Harden like he doesn't like you said, he's not always as aggressive as he should be.
Right. James Harden averages about 26 shots per game. He shot 16 shots last night.
Shout out to Patrick Beverly for doing a good job on him in the first half. I will say that.
Yeah.
But you're 8 for 16, 28 points. Like I said, James Harden, he's the best player. He should get shots up. But of course. 16 shots compared to what he's at, 25 shots per game, basically.
He shoots about 25 shots per game.
It's like, were you all the way there? Did you feel like you out of it? So, was it did he purposely defer to Westbrook, I guess is my question, because he.
I think, honestly, watching what I watched, it seemed like Patrick Beverly annoyed him. And then when Patrick Beverly wasn't there, it was Paul George. And if Paul George not there, it's Kawhi. And it's just like, shit, man. Like, can somebody that's not the Fed guard me? Like Paul George, I'm going to get to that in a second. But when Paul George is on your defense, like, for a while it was Kawhi. And it might still be Kawhi, but I think Paul George is the best perimeter defender in the league because he's still so athletic. And then, Kawhi got, his knee injuries or whatever, but he's so athletic and he's so long. Right. I just be wondering why Paul George isn't the best player in the NBA. That's what I was about to say. But we ain't even talking about him right now. But I just think James, it just got frustrating for him because he shot 8 for 16. That's 50% from the field. But he missed 3 free throws last night. That don't happen too often. He had 28 points. It's like, this is what y'all should want from James. But it just seemed like a weird game. Like you say, Patrick Beverly was on him heavy the first game. He stepped back and Patrick Beverly was stripping it. They just made it real tough for James. So shout out to the Clippers defense.
Right. But back to the Clippers to this point.
They did lose. Though.
They did lose. I think at some point Doc Rivers is going to have to go away from this. It's your turn, my turn ball with Kawhi, Paul George, and Lou Williams.
They had the full team last night.
And they lost the game in the second half.
They did. Yeah.
Like they were up big going. They were up double digits going into halftime. They let the Rockets come back. Third quarter basically determined the game because I think Paul George doesn't want to play inside of the offense first and foremost.
Yeah, and he said a couple years ago, don't run plays for him. He just get in the flow.
But then that leads to his inconsistent shooting. Like he'll have nights where he looks like the best player. He looks like Kevin Durant some nights.
Right.
And then he has some nights where he looks like, no disrespect, Jonathan Bender.
Dang, Jonathan Bender was great.
He was. I love Jonathan Bender.
Well, he was supposed to be great.
He was supposed to be.
Going on. You know, he got the microscopic surgery before when it ruined careers.
Right. Shout out to Jonathan Bender.
Shout out to Jonathan Bender. But you are right.
McDonald All-American legend. But
you are
and
correct.
then Kawhi Leonard. Because Kawhi Leonard should be the player where you go as the offense go. Like, you pick your spots. Paul George shouldn't be the player picking his spots. It should be Kawhi Leonard because we know Lou Williams is going to come in. Lou Williams, regardless who's he on the court with.
Right.
Like, Lou Williams going to have the ball in his hands.
Right.
And
Lou didn't get any shots up for real last night. Only 5 shots. So that was kind of un-Lou-like. But, you know, he's been hurt. I think
he just came back. Yeah, he just came back from injury as well. And Montrezl Harrell, who they also now have to figure out a way to get shots, also take a lot of ISO possessions.
Right. But you can look in their shot attempts that, like you say, that it is a my turn, his turn type of offense because Paul George and Kawhi is getting shots. And Montrez is getting shots, meaning I'm playing pick and roll with my big man, but Lou wasn't getting shots. Shamit isn't getting shots, meaning y'all not really running offense for real. Like, so I think that's something that they got to look into. And they can't gain chemistry because they load manage. They don't practice a lot. Paul George started the year hurt. The Clippers' full roster, I don't know this off the top of my head, but their full roster play last night, they had to be like the 3rd or 4th game everybody has played. Lou, at least the important people, Lou, Patrick Beverly, Kawhi, Paul George, Montrez, you got Shamit out there. Like, with all of them playing, they can't have played more than 5 games together this year. So, you know, hopefully they get it in rhythm because the Clippers can win the championship, but don't just think because you insert Paul George and Kawhi into this lineup like it's just sweet like that. Just like with the Lakers, just because you get Anthony Davis, it's not just sweet like that. Like, you still got to work.
All right, still got to. And speaking of that, did you see the quote recently? Doc Rivers, because Coach LeBron came out again with we don't load manage over here.
Right. Yeah.
And then
why wouldn't I play all the 82 games?
And then Doc Rivers, his rebuttal to that was, that's not what we doing over here. We do what we want. They do clear, that he said. Like, this is just the I didn't actually see the whole thing, but it was like, they just do whatever LeBron wants.
Right. That was a quote. I actually heard him say it. He said, I don't know what their philosophy is whatever LeBron wants it to be. And I want to shout out LeBron for taking this approach to want to play every game, but I'm so over him acting like he didn't load manage or he didn't sit out games. Like, we get it. You're at the end of your career, and he missed a lot of games last year, so that maybe made him put it in perspective. But let's not act like he didn't load manage. So shout out to Doc.
Shout out to Doc, but just to stay on the Doc and former Celtics, because KG recently came out and said what he said about LeBron, which the quote isn't that bad. What he said isn't that bad if you actually think about who it's coming from and where it's coming from. But because of that Celtics team,
because they are a little overly cocky.
They are
overly cocky.
So you don't want to hear him say it. And I think Doc Rivers also has fallen into that because we've said this off record before we had this podcast. Doc Rivers is a good coach. But you take that one championship away from him, what's the difference between him and... He's not a Greg Popovich, in my opinion. He's not a Pat Riley. He's not a Phil Jackson. I mean, nobody's those coaches. But
I mean, they put him up there in that conversation, though, as the best coach.
I don't even think he's a Steve Kerr.
Yeah, so I think... It's funny, though, with the outrage of people with KG, because when KD went to the Warriors, I remember everything in the basketball talk. When KD went to the Warriors, everybody always said, oh, it's not the same with LeBron going to Miami because LeBron went to Miami because he could beat the Celtics. But then when Garnett come out and says, we broke LeBron, it's, now he just talking crap. Right. So it was definitely some truth into what KG said. They also are on a book tour, so they're going to talk about this stuff a little more. And they're retired players, so I saw somebody say he's saying this for clout. KG is the highest earning player in NBA history. He don't need no clout. Like the clout thing, we're gonna end that in 2020. KG, he Hall of Famer, he MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, 2 NBA championships.
What?
Come on. I mean, 2 NBA Finals appearances, 1 championship. Come on now. But the Celtics team, they do talk like they have like 5 championships and they went to 10.
They do.
They the Bill Russell Celtics.
Right.
But it's some truth in the way he said it.
And if you think about what you think about KG's career, who more has a right to speak on stuff like that?
Exactly. He know all about it.
People act like he left Minnesota when he was 25, 26, 24. No. KG was already 10 plus years in the league.
Right.
And he had done everything he could do for Minnesota.
And I also saw some quotes like, "Oh, KG, don't you realize you do the same thing?" So this is for the young people who didn't remember. But you remember that whole sequence going down with him being traded from Boston to there? KG didn't want to leave. They had to overly convince him. Like Flip Saunders had to go to him like KG.
Chauncey Billups told him to do it.
Bro, this the right move for your career. We know you love Minnesota. You're not quitting. We're letting you go.
Right.
Like that's what it came down to. And I remember once they traded for Ray and all that, then he was like, all right, I'll do it. But KG didn't want to leave. To anybody that doesn't remember that, he didn't demand a trade. He didn't force his way out of Minnesota. And once they started talking about trading him somewhere, he was like, "No, put some pieces around me. I want to win with my team," because KG is that way, which is why he does hold his Celtics team close, and them his brothers, and he was mad when Ray left because it is about us and stuff. Because at the end of the day, he did get traded, but he didn't want to get traded. And then they bring up, "Oh, and after that, you went to Brooklyn when he was old." He didn't want to be traded then either. They had to convince. So he's consistent. People had to come by and be like, "Bro, this is what got to happen." And even Danny Ainge, I remember him telling Paul Pierce to them, like, we was about to break it up anyway. It was time to move y'all. The only piece was KG because he had a no trade clause, so we had to put y'all together to make sure he would waive it. But they were gonna stop playing him if he didn't waive his no trade clause.
Right.
So KG, he's never demanded a trade. I mean, I ain't gonna say never because I don't really just know like that. But I do remember vividly. They had to go to KG and be like, "Bro, waive your no trade clause. Like you need to go." So I can't say total BS in what he said because I do remember also it was calculated in LeBron them taking shorter deals so they could consider playing together because we all know about the conversation with Melo and what the original big three was supposed to be: Wade, Melo, LeBron.
Right.
And Melo, he was winning. He likes his time in Denver, so he didn't want to do it. Then he had a kid. I'm not turning down $80 million. Y'all crazy. I might not get this money back.
Right.
So, but it was supposed to be them. So it's some truth into it, but it's not complete.
Right.
I mean, it's not complete gospel either.
Right. And speaking of Melo, not talking about Melo, but
shout out to Melo.
Shout out to Carmelo Anthony, showing niggas that if you can play basketball, you can play basketball. But this is not about Melo right now. This is about Hassan Whiteside and his ever effective laziness.
Oh, but real quick, before we can't get into him, but I want people to give Melo his credit for what he's doing. Portland was struggling, injuries, et cetera, et cetera. But Portland's in 9th place right now, and they're going to make the playoffs this year. And they weren't on pace to make the playoffs before Melo got there. He is undisputedly their 3rd best player. Second best player, really, because I'm not that high. I ain't going to say I'm not that high on CJ, but CJ be too up and down for me. But back to Hassan Whiteside.
He recently had a quote. I guess he was asked about the possibility of getting traded for Kevin Love, and his whole thing was Kevin Love doesn't play defense like him, and he doesn't rebound him.
Right? Because did you see how what happened? So it was after he had a big game or whatever, and he was joking with Melo. Yeah, Kevin Love don't rebound like that, and then he had like 5 shots, and he was like, he don't block shots like that either. And then to what you're saying now, they asked him, "You think about it?" He's like, "I ain't think about it. I was just joking with Melo."
Clearly thinking about it.
Right.
But it's like, it's not Hassan Whiteside. What you've been giving Portland this year is what you've been doing your whole career. You're 7'1", you're big body, you take up space. You're gonna get your 12 rebounds.
He just assumes because he's averaging a double-double, that means he's playing great. And
he's
like,
not.
You can wake up. You can sleep and get a double-double, right?
Especially with how he was talking in the offseason after he was moved. We got shooters like you were the star. Like, who is this we? You just getting here. You're part of the role player system.
Right.
But Hassan Whiteside and I've said this before off record, Hassan Whiteside is a very leave things to be desired type of player. It's a reason why he hasn't been an all-star. It's a reason why Miami also took him out of the offense.
Right.
Because he doesn't provide much offense, because he doesn't want to provide the offense. He thinks, like, he's 7'1". You're not the only 7'1" player out there. And even if you were, you're not the only 7'1" player. You're not the only player with a long wingspan. People, you don't move your feet well. Kevin Love will be an upgrade from Hassan Whiteside because he's not giving us much. I know we need him because Nurk isn't supposed to be back this year. So it's like we do need a rim protector, but it's not Hassan Whiteside. He's not helping the way he should be helping. I would love the Kevin Love trade for Hassan Whiteside.
And he tried to say that I don't think Kevin Love is going to help with the defense or whatever, but clearly you aren't helping with the defense either because you're supposed to be a defensive anchor and your defense is bad. So your anchor isn't working that well. My only thing with the Kevin Love thing is, unless they're going to say they're going to commit him to playing center, I just think it clashes with Melo unless they're moving Melo back to the 3. So I would be interested to see how that goes because I think they play in such a good rhythm with Melo. You don't necessarily have to move him to the bench. So I would like somebody that fit better with Melo. Better with Melo, CJ, and Dame because they play well together. And I think I want to keep Melo in the rhythm that he's in because he's an important piece of that team. But Kevin Love would fit well with him. I would just play him at center, though.
Yeah. And like I said, they're going to probably get Zach Collins back before the end of the year. That's another 7-footer. You can play him at the center with Kevin Love at times. But Hassan Whiteside just hasn't been the answer to what Portland needed. So, I think it's time to move on. And it's likely either got to be in a trade for Kevin Love or Danilo Gallinari. I would probably prefer Kevin Love, but I like Dino as well.
Because Dino could play the 3 and the 4, so he could fit with them. I would prefer probably Kevin Love, though. I think Dino's a good player, but he's left a lot to be desired his whole career for me, honestly, ever since he got traded for Melo. So I prefer Kevin Love. I think the crowd would like him. He's from Oregon. So
and Kevin Love wants to go back. He wants to go to Portland.
So I think it just makes sense. And then that'll keep LaMarcus Aldridge from coming back since he want to go back now. He should have never left. So get another power forward so you don't got to get LA. LA don't deserve he don't deserve to go back to Portland. Stay in San Antonio and retire there because you could have stayed in Portland. You had no reason to leave. So I don't want him going back to Portland. So stay in San Antonio.
Our Atlanta Hawks. They lost another game last night. They're in sole place of last place.
Yeah, the Hawks, I believe they had this is my problem with the Hawks. It ain't even that they lost the other day to the New York Knicks. They got blown out. How you lose by 20 to the Knicks? Like, y'all both have the worst record in the East.
I think Trae Young had 41 against the Knicks.
Yeah, 42-8.
42-8. Then he came back, he had 30 against Utah last night. I seen this on Twitter. Shouts out to Hoops and Brews. I think it was TPJ. He said Trae Young is the most ineffective player in the NBA.
That's not. I love Trae, but when you're averaging 28-9, you got the worst record in the league. I'm not even gonna lie. I was watching their stats the other day, and Trae's his shooting percentages are great. But I was like, damn, Trae is really just putting up stats. I mean, it's not really leading to nothing. But John Collins getting suspended doesn't help.
No, absolutely correct.
Your role players that you're expecting to make a step up not hooping doesn't help. But with that said, I also saw somebody say Trae Young is just a score first pass against Steve Nash. Which, I mean, really that's because he's Steph Curry, but he just ran with the Steve Nash thing because don't compare him to the 2-time MVP. It was getting crazy because...
Steve Nash is the 2-time MVP.
True, exactly. No disrespect. But when they was comparing him to Steph and it wasn't like his shooting percentage wasn't Steph results, it was like, oh, I really prefer to be Steve Nash. It's like, bro, you prefer to be Steve Nash and you scoring 30 points per game? Not really. Steve Nash may be a big influence on you, but...
You ain't Steve Nash.
You're not. So... But I can't really disagree with that because, like I say, his numbers are there, but he is just putting up big shots and 20. It's like I said with Anthony Davis, 36 last night. He's averaging 28 and 8 and a half. What can you say?
Right.
But he could be better. He could be better. I think he could shoot a higher percentage. I think Trae's too good of a shooter. He should be shooting 44% from the field and 37 from 3. I think he should be at about 46.
And which again goes back to the Steve Nash Steph Curry comparison.
Right. Steve Nash 50-40-90. Steph was 50-40, close to 50-40-90
every year. Right. So it's like
Steph, was he not 50-40-90 year they won 73?
Yeah,
No,
he was. He was 90, 50, 45.
45, right? Because that was first of all time.
Because I know he's all, Steph now is getting to the point where because he's in his prime, he understands how to play. Steph is basically, I think if Steph come back healthy next year, just to switch gears real quick, we're not going to stay on here long, but I think Steph is going to be the first person in the NBA with a 90, 50, 50 season, which he almost did last year.
Mm-hmm. But it's crazy he almost did it last year. The season that him and KD both kind of had last year kind of got overlooked because they both had some crazy stretches. And, they couldn't be in the MVP race, even though LeBron and Anthony Davis are both in the MVP race this year, according to the media. But that's another story for another day. But I do think he could be 50-50-90. I wouldn't be surprised if it happened.
Just to switch topics, it's the middle of December. Of course, no MVP resume is filled out yet, but I think last night, just go back to Milwaukee and the Lakers real quick. I think last night was Giannis' first MVP game.
Game. Yeah, that was definitely a statement game.
His check. That's the first game off his checklist for his NBA MVP.
Right, because this is the time where you can start building your resume. And that game, I hate to not say I'm not high on Giannis. I just don't love Giannis the way everybody else do. But I definitely respect Giannis's approach to the game. Like, he saw that game last night. We both got the best records in the league. LeBron's a top 5 player. Anthony Davis is a top 5 player. Or I want to think I'm the best player. And Giannis, I said it on Instagram, like, he gets up for those games. He wants to show that he not only belongs, but he's the best and that I could win this game. So it definitely was an MVP game for Giannis last night. 34 points, career high 5 threes, and he was taking the threes confidently. Like, I take these shots.
Right.
But I like a couple times he had the post. He did the Kobe reverse around the right shoulder jump shot. Giannis looked good last night.
So.
And, Luka is my MVP, even though we're not talking MVPs
right now.
I just want Luka to win the MVP. But, Giannis, if we're starting with statement games, check mark.
Yeah, this is when you start making statement games. I'm not saying he hasn't had good games that wouldn't this
he had it, but that's the first one. Right. December the 18, 17,
right?
Back in January.
Like all the games before that are precursors. You're doing what you're supposed to be doing, and then now this is your, like I said, even though they're both off of one loss, they both had best records. So it's like
best record in the league, but we 30 games in. Right. Everybody played other than Eric Bledsoe, so you can't be like, this person out, that person out. Kuz didn't play, so Bledsoe, Kuz, whatever. Right. But your heavy hitters played. They miss one person, you miss one person. They miss their third best player, you miss your third best player. That was for sure. I think it was a really good statement for Giannis. And the way he just, to me, with their numbers being so close, he just so outplayed Anthony Davis to me. And I think that's what really mattered.
That extra effort.
Yeah, I think that really mattered.
I think Milwaukee as a team just gave that extra effort.
Milwaukee want to prove that they real finals.
But I think that also starts with Giannis.
Yeah, for sure. Start with Giannis. So, great win for Milwaukee. I guess we're going to get out of here in a second. But before we do, I want to switch up to Philly a little bit real quick. Can't end without talking about Philly for a second.
They got the Mavericks tonight at 8 o'clock, ESPN.
No Luka, right?
No Luka.
Philly just lost their first home game. They started off the year last undefeated team. Then they went on a little losing streak. And they got hot again. And they've taken care of some business, but then they have it at the same time. Joel's been in and out. He's having a solid season. I expected more. I expect Ben to pick it up. I think with Philly team probably got the best starting lineup in the NBA. Definitely top 3 starting lineups. Their bench is so bad, and their shooting isn't really so reliable that I expect Philly to make a move. But I got 3 things I want to say about Philly. I think they definitely need to make a move. Go get Wayne Ellington, or I'm just naming a shooter. Wayne Ellington or one of those shooters like that. Bring them into the fold because definitely need a shooter. J.R. Smith. He's sitting at home messing with Irish from Flash, but whatever. All right. So go sign J.R. Smith or something.
Right.
But it's something that I want to see Philly do that Brett Brown has proven to not do so far, and I think it's going to lead to him getting fired. He's going down a real Mike D'Antoni-ish way of not making adjustments. He doesn't adjust well. And an adjustment I would like to see him make to bolster Philly's bench and to free this player up, even though he's been having a solid season, I would like to see Josh Richardson get moved to the bench because with the starting lineup, it's like he's just expected to be a knockdown shooter, which he's really more of a slasher, playmaker, scorer than a shooter. So I think with him coming off the bench, that'll bring some scoring to the bench. That will free him up to be like, hey, you the first option. We running plays through you. It could be some times where it's just him and Embiid on the court and things like that, which, I mean, you could do that while he's a starter also. But
right.
That's something I would like to see him do. And I would just like to see Brett Brown make better adjustments. So it's going to lead to him being fired. Brett Brown, like Philly, new pieces. You trying to cultivate this championship culture, so I didn't expect them to be perfect. They still, at the end of the day, are top 3 in the East, so you can't cry for them. But their team leaves a lot to be desired, and they don't hold on leads well because once the starters come out the game, it's over, and I don't think it's really good. So I think that Josh Richardson probably shouldn't be moved to the bench. I think Ben should play higher minutes because he's the young, healthy guy. So Ben is top 5 defender in the NBA. I would take advantage of all Ben's talent, but Philly, they need to be better, I think.
Right, they need to be better, and they can be better.
Yeah, and shout out to Tobias. Tobias been getting hot a little bit recently. I think Tobias, unless Ben steps it up, Tobias is gonna get Ben's All-Star spot because Ben is not an All-Star right now. But
who would you put in the starting lineup for Josh Richardson? You put him on the bench. You gotta put somebody in the starting lineup.
Exactly.
Who's the player you would put that would be would be the most effective? I could go with me personally because I think they need a shooter out there. I would go with Kirk Miles.
Kirk Miles, right, and that's what they would need. And then he still fit with the size 6'7" player. So Kirk Miles would fit, but I will go with somebody that I like. He's getting a lot of praise. Is Matisse Thybulle. Matisse, rookie, already one of the best defenders in the NBA.
Right.
He's the first thing I heard about him was he's a defensive playmaker. I mean, he's a good on-ball defender, but he makes game like he gets the steal that gets the crowd into it. He gets a steal and get a dunk and to get the team into it. Solid shooter also, so you're not really real 3-and-D kind of player. I believe he's shooting a pretty high percentage from 3 this year, or a solid percentage from 3. He's shooting 46% from 3. So, I mean,
2 attempts.
So he doesn't take high threes, but he could take more threes, and I think he is about a 40% three-point shooter. But when you put him in there with his defense, his shooting, and his youth, and then he fits the shooter defender while Josh Richardson fits the scorer defender. Josh Richardson can be on the bench, and he can be your Jamal Crawford, he can be your Lou Williams, while Thybulle can just shoot threes and he can defend. And with him and Ben on defense, plus Joel Embiid has been top 3 in defensive player of the year.
Al Horford out there. Tobias Harris would literally be the only weak link on defense.
And he plays defense. I mean, he's not a lockdown defender, but he plays defense. Right. He's not a weak spot. So I would definitely swap Thybulle, and then still Thybulle 6'5". So still got good size. He'd be the shortest player in the starting lineup at 6'5". So that's pretty good.
Right.
So I would swap those two. That would be the adjustment that I would make, and not because Josh Richardson doesn't deserve to close games or he isn't playing. The bench is so bad that if you put Josh Richardson on the bench, I mean, that's 17 points per game on the bench. So 14, excuse me, but he averaged 16 last year. So putting him on the bench, he probably can get back to that 16 point per game range because he'll get more opportunities. Right. And I think Josh, he's from 36.
You think he'll accept that coming off because some players at the end of the day you can you can want a player to come off the bench, but you think he'll accept that coming off the bench?
Right, and he's been starting for a couple years now, young player. I think I would hope that he would, and I think that he would. He doesn't seem like he's too high maintenance or whatever. Yeah. So I think he would, and for a championship team, you should. I think it's the right move, and honestly, he's playing like a player that should be a 6 man and not just starting 2. Right. And the offense they don't need another. Thybulle will help the spacing. Let's see if his 3-point percentage is real or not. Is he really a 40%? 3-point shooter, which I think he is. So.
And one more shout out DeAndre Ayton. He just came back from his 25 game suspension the other night. I think he had 18 and 12. I think
that's his number. He sticks with that 18 and 12. It's like you could pencil every night. DeAndre Ayton 18 and 12.
I mean they lost. Devin Booker didn't play in that game, so they took the L.
True.
But
what happened with him, and luckily Phoenix, I mean, they fell off, but they're still right there. I believe they're in 10th place, so they're right behind Portland. But we said in 25 games, remember, Phoenix was it was early, obviously. But Phoenix started off the year top in the playoffs, but 25 games could affect where it happened. So hopefully he learned from this. And, I mean, considering it wasn't an injury, he should still be in great shape. So shout out to Ayton. hopefully we get John Collins should be about to come back soon, and hopefully these guys will stay on the court.
A lot of players returned. De'Aaron Fox came back from injury the other night.
Shout out to De'Aaron Fox.
Marvin Bagley's played. He's back. I didn't even realize he only played the first game of the season before he got hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And, he's played his last 5, so shout out to him. That's also helped Sacramento in the win category because they just got more bodies out there and pieces that they needed and were missing. Shout out to Kelly Oubre for dunking on Paul George the other night and staring him down. They lost, but that was just such a nasty dunk. I just had to bring that back out.
He dunked on him for real. Right. That's because Paul George tried to block with the offhand and Kelly Oubre's left-handed, so he didn't even stand a chance.
I think that's all we got for today.
Yeah, that's all we got. Look out for tonight's game. It's Friday, Philly versus Dallas. That should be a really, really, really entertaining game. I can't wait to watch that. Even though Luka isn't playing, I can't wait to see. I like that Luka being out gives Porzingis more of an opportunity to just get some shots up or whatever, and just get more comfortable. Even though they play really well together, I think people have been a little too hard on Porzingis considering he's averaging about 18, 8, and 2 blocks, something in that range. I'm just guessing his numbers. Fresh off injury, 18, 8, 2 blocks, them all-star numbers.
Right.
So, shout out to Dallas. But definitely need Philly to get this win after coming off a loss.
All right. Other than that, I'm John W.
It's Fresh X.
We are the Hoopers.
All right, players.